Homeowners Deed Protection and Squatter Information webinar. Tonight's webinar is hosted by Queens District Attorney Melinda Katz and New York Assembly Member Nily Rozic, partnering to provide a comprehensive overview of available housing and worker resources to the residents of Queens County. This webinar will feature a presentation from Bureau Chief William Jorgensen, followed by a brief question and answer session. To submit a question throughout the webinar, please utilize the Q&A icon at the bottom of the screen. Now, of course, before we begin, please allow me to introduce the host of this evening, the district attorney who established the Housing and Worker Protection Bureau during her first year in office to combat concerns on this issue, Queens District Attorney Melinda Katz.
Hi, everybody. First of all, let me apologize for my lighting. I'm in the car going. We were trying to get to Roosevelt Avenue where we were doing a press conference on cleaning up the area and working hard to bring some order to it. But I didn't make it there. I wanted to make sure that I was here with all of you. I want to thank Assemblywoman Rozic for the work that she does in Albany and the work she does in the community. And I have to tell you, when the squatter issue came up, she was one of the first people to call me and say, hey, we need to educate the community. We need to make sure that people understand the distinctions between leases and squatters. And I want to thank her for the work that she does. Thank you to Bill and to Colleen, the executive over community partnerships, and Jackie and everybody that's on here today. I'm just introducing the Assemblywoman, but I'm just going to, if I can. So squatting is a huge issue. We had the issue in Queens, as you know. There was a woman who owned a piece of property and was arrested because there were people there who claimed to have a lease. They didn't, in fact, have a lease. It was actually a forged lease. And she was arrested and, you know, the police show up and they don't really know, right? They show up and there's someone who says, I own the property. Someone else says, I have a lease. And in this particular case, in the first case, was someone who changed the locks. And so we came back to the office and I huddled with my team and said, we need to really get this under control, because you can't walk into a house that's not yours and claim you have a right to be there. It's not what we're doing in Queens. It's not how we're going to do this in our neighborhoods. And we need to make sure that we handle this properly. So I wanted to make very clear on this call that Bill is going to do a presentation on squatting and how you know that you have been the victim of it, and also what to do when you have. But I want to make something very clear as the person whose name on the door. This is not a girlfriend, a boyfriend, a son, a daughter, a best friend, a mother, a father. This is not someone who you've given permission to come into your home and live there. It's not a renter. This is someone who goes over the front doorstep illegally, who enters your premises when they're not wanted or not known, who decides that since your property was vacant, they're just going to move in. And then 2 months later claims that they have a right to be there because they have a Shake Shack. And so that's not happening in our borough. And it shouldn't happen in the city. I think people are becoming a little more, accountable right now. And so I wanted to make sure that I made that very clear, that we will not accept someone walking into your home saying they have a right to be there when they actually never had a right to walk through the front door. And so that, plus a lot of different issues with scams, but I'm not going to get into that. All I can tell you about scams as the chief law enforcement officer of this borough, don't give anybody your money. Just don't do it. You don't know them. They're on the other side of a phone. They are on your emails. And if you have fallen for it, please do not be embarrassed. Please. This is what they do for a living. Please call our office. I can't promise you that we can make it right, but I will promise you that we'll try. Even if we don't have a defendant, we've gotten money back for people. And that's really the important thing at the end of the day. So those are my 2 cents to this. I want to introduce the Assemblywoman who is hosting with me tonight, Assemblywoman Nily, Rozic.
Thank you to our great DA and making the time for our little corner of Queens. We really appreciate all that you do every single day fighting for homeowners and residents of this great borough and your longstanding commitment to doing that. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Nily Rozic. I represent parts of Eastern Queens, including Fresh Meadows, Oakland Gardens, South Flushing, and Briarwood. I've been in the Assembly for 11 years now, working in partnership with folks from the DA's office every single day, addressing not only, the squatter issue, but also, as the DA touched on, a lot of the issues of fraud and scam, consumer scams that come across my desk as chair of the Consumer Protection Committee in the State Assembly. We'll continue that partnership. That is my commitment tonight as well. On the squatters issues, I just want to say it was important that we acted with urgency to send a strong message this year to squatters who take over private homes that they are not welcome in our community. The DA gave the example of something that happened, a punctuated moment that the Post wrote about and that everyone heard about. But this has been a longstanding issue across the borough. Scam artists intrude others' homes, and they should not have the rights as tenants in state housing law. So we got together with a coalition of state legislators this year to change the law, to make it more clear and to empower law enforcement and the DA's office to do what they got to do and make sure that people feel protected and safe in their homes, because that's our number one priority. So defining this, the term squatter was really important and a crucial step in that. We'll continue examining even stronger measures to protect homeowners and renters alike. But I really want to echo what the DA said, which is, reach out to our offices if you feel like you've been a victim or if you're continuing to notice something wrong in your community, on your block. This is really about all of you. And with that, I will turn it over to Bill or Jackie from the DA's office.
Well, let me,
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Let me also thank Bill Jorgensen for the work that he has done. We had to really start from the beginning, and I thank him for that. All these cases that we are prosecuting are in his bureau, and he is the bureau chief. And he gives his time to a lot of these community events, which is very important to educate people as well. So I just want to thank him. I don't know if I'm introducing him, but
Thank you, DA. Yep, and thank you, Assembly Member, for your incredible work and leadership on this topic. Of course, tonight's speaker is Bill Jorgensen, the Bureau Chief of the Housing and Worker Protection Bureau. Bill is going to provide a comprehensive overview of the Bureau, tips to safeguard against deed fraud, as well as valuable resources on how to avoid becoming a victim on this topic. So without further ado, please, Bill Jorgensen.
All right. Thank you very much, Jackie. And again, I know that the district attorney had to run because she is incredibly busy, but I'm going to thank her anyway for giving me the opportunity to speak here. And I want to thank you too, Assembly Member Rozic. One of the things that as a career prosecutor, I have come to truly appreciate about what's being done here in Queens, having been in this business for over 30 years, is the district attorney's philosophy and position that the first time that you meet a district attorney should not be in court. It should be at an event like this or any of the other events that we do out here in Queens. And that's something that I really have come to embrace wholeheartedly. The other thing here is I also firmly believe that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And if by doing these presentations, I can prevent one person from becoming a victim of either deed fraud, where their house is stolen, or being the victim of squatters, where their house is stolen, then I would consider this evening a tremendous success. So I want to talk a little bit about, I'm going to talk primarily about squatters because that is obviously a word that is on everybody's minds these days. But I'm also going to talk a little bit about deed fraud because it's something that has become a problem here in Queens. And quite frankly, after over 30 years in this business, I didn't think I could be surprised by anything. I've been surprised by the prevalence of deed fraud and squatters. And that's one of the reasons why we're working so hard to do something about this. Um, so let's talk about squatters. What are squatters? Why do we hear about them? What's going on with them? Um, First of all, I want to distinguish between a tenant or a person who is a leaseholder and a squatter. I think honestly, the best term that I can provide, that I can give to a squatter, is not a squatter. And I'm going to give it to the person who also does deed theft. I'm going to call them home thieves. That is, people who steal your home. All right. And a squatter steals your home by stealing the use of your home. That is, they come in, they you have no idea who this person is. They enter your home because you're away. Maybe you're out of town for personal reasons, business reasons, health reasons. Maybe, like in my particular case, you have a parent's home that is now empty that you're put on the market. And this person just comes in and they literally make themselves at home. And they move in the big screen TV and they bring in the pots and pans and they start setting up house. Um, a squatter, a home thief, is not a tenant. What is a tenant? A tenant is a person that you agreed either in writing or with a handshake to allow to stay in your house, either for rent or not for rent. I mean, in my own experience, I rented my parents' house out to a friend of mine who's a retired firefighter. Okay. It's all on a handshake. I've known the guy for 40 years. We don't have a lease. We have an agreement. I allowed him in. He paid me rent. It worked out wonderfully. When he moved out and his ex-wife moved in, she also became a leaseholder, a tenant. She's not a trespasser. Even if this was done, let's say it was done without my permission or authority, but she moved in with the authority of a tenant. So a tenant is a person who has a right to be in the home, has been allowed in the home through an agreement with the landlord, through the owner or the owner of the property. A tenant can also be a person who was allowed into the home by another tenant. So when we talk squatter, we're talking a home thief, we're talking a trespasser, we're talking a burglar. We are not talking about a renter, the son of a renter, the ex-girlfriend of a renter, the cousin of a renter, because those are people who have a license to be in the location. So I like to think of a squatter as a burglar who never left, somebody who literally breaks down the door, comes in, lays out the air mattress, and starts, moving it. So how can you tell? How does this happen, right? I mean, like, does this happen to people who are living in their home? Generally, no, but honestly, nothing surprises me anymore. But generally, this happens with homes that, for one reason or another, are unoccupied. In one case, it was a person who purchased a home and was renovating the home, and then the squatter moved in. In another case, we had a person who had left the home and put up for sale, and the squatter moved in. In a third case, we had a person who went into an assisted living facility years ago and just never got around to selling the house because there was a lot of emotion there was a lot of sentiment there, and the house was neglected, and the squatter moved in. But the key thing to remember here is that the house is apparently unoccupied. A squatter, I think of a squatter or a home thief as like a predator. Okay. Predators go after easy prey. They don't go after a big, mean old elephant. They go after the baby gazelle with a busted leg, right? So squatters, home thieves, go after houses that are easy marks, houses that are not maintained, houses that are apparently not being cared for. So, very often because somebody's not at home, right? They're not there because it's their parents' house or they've had to leave for a variety of reasons. They don't know what's going on. How do you know if you're the victim of squatters? Well, there's a number of ways you can tell. First of all, if you're still in touch with the neighbors tell you what's going on. That's one way to find out. Another way is maybe suddenly if you've been paying the electric bill and the electric bill goes from $50 a month to $550 a month, that's a good clue, right? Um, but there are other ways. We have had cases where people would be checking on a property that's been in the family for years, and they show up and the house is being gutted and renovated. So these are all ways to tell when you have become the victim of squatting, when somebody is there that isn't supposed to be there. So how do you prevent yourself from becoming the victim of being of squatters? Well, I can tell you a number of the steps that I'm taking with my parents' house in Staten Island. Okay. One of the things that I've done is, Mr. Sanchez had been mowing my parents' lawn for 25 years. And so when my tenants moved out, I called up Mr. Sanchez and I said, Mr. Sanchez, I'd like to continue to use your services. And if you could please give my house a makeover. He went in there and he cleared out the shrubs and the hedges, and he mowed the lawn and he made the house look great. Put down some flowers. So you maintain the front, you maintain the exterior of your home, right? You sand scrape and paint the peeling paint. You fix the roof. You mow the lawn. You clean up the garbage. One of the things that we've learned in doing these investigations is that squatters will employ various tricks to see if somebody's paying attention. And one of them is something I call the garbage test. House appears to be unoccupied. A squatter will come by and throw a little garbage on the front lawn. And if that garbage isn't picked up in the next couple of days, now they know there's nobody home, right? Because who among us will let that pile of garbage sit on their front yard, right? I know I won't, if for no other reason that my wife will start yelling at me if I let it stay there. So that's one thing. The other thing is, you want to, first of all, another thing you need to do, and this is important for both deed fraud and for squatters, is you should confirm the title to your home. The city register maintains records of everybody who owns their home. And you can go into the city register through the Department of Finance. You can go onto a system called ACRIS, and you can look up and confirm the title to your home. I do it maybe once every 6 months. Okay. And just this way you have the lease. You know that the lease is in your name, because if, God forbid, the squatters do show up, now you've got a record. This is yours. The other thing that I did, and that I strongly recommend that people do when they know that they're going to be away or the house is going to be unoccupied, is enlist your nosy neighbors, right? People sometimes say, oh, so-and-so is Joe's a nosy neighbor, or Dominic never lets anything go by his block without his business. You know what? I call those nosy neighbors good neighbors. And one of the great things about my parents' neighborhood was that I walked around the house, and everybody was on a first name basis. Everybody had been there for 20 years, and everybody knew everybody else's business. So when I put the house up for sale, I did a little walking tour of the neighborhood. And I talked to my neighbor Sarem and my neighbor Dominic and my neighbor John. And I said to them, I'm putting the house up for sale, right? And now I have 4 sets of eyeballs keeping an eye on that house all the time. And I still, every couple of days, I get a text message from Saram or Denise or Dominic or whoever it may be to say, hey, Bill, saw so-and-so, or what's going on, or just to tell me everything is okay. All right. And we have proof that this works because in one of our other squatter cases, and I don't want to talk names because a lot of these investigations are ongoing, one of the witnesses actually said to me, and you were a little kind of embarrassed. She's like, I feel kind of like the nosy neighbor, but, it just didn't ring true. And I told her, I said, don't you think that way? I said, it's because you are a nosy neighbor that we even know that something's going on, because the owner of the house was living in California and administering the estate of his mother who had passed away, right? So our victim is in San Francisco trying to figure out what to do with his late mother's house. How is he going to know whether or not there's squatters there? Well, he knows because of his nosy neighbor. So that's why I say nosy neighbors are good neighbors. The other thing that you got to do is you got to make it look like the house is occupied. So I told my neighbor, hey, put your car in my driveway, or have your daughter put her car in the driveway. So every couple of days, there's a different car in the driveway. You can also do things like put lights on timers or get motion sensors. These are great things to keep an eye on your house and to let people know that there's somebody there, because nothing will quite surprise a trespasser like a spotlight coming on when they walk across the front lawn. And while we're at it, if you can get a security camera or a Ring doorbell, I think it's a very useful product because it will create a record of what's going on. And that's going to be important later on when you report the squatter, the trespasser, the home thief to the police. But there's no substitute for just regularly inspecting the property. My parents' house is in Staten Island. I live in Nassau. I work in Queens. I can't get out there as much as I'd like to, but I do go out there from time to time, and I walk the property and I take a video. And we know that this helps because in one of the cases where we were able to get a conviction, the squatter, when the police confronted him, said, "Oh, I've been living here for 30 days, more than 30 days," right? Because they all think that if they can say they've been there more than 30 days, the police are going to say, "Oh, he's got squatters' rights and he's got to go to landlord tenant court." So when the cops ask somebody how long you've been here, they don't say, "Oh, I've been renting since last year. Oh, I've been renting for 6 months." They say, "I've been here more than 30 days," right? It's almost like a rote answer. We see it all the time. So that's what this person did in the case where we made an arrest and we got a conviction. Guy said, "I've been here 30 days. Well, the real estate agent who had been doing regularly weekly inspections had just been there the week before with a Department of Buildings inspector, and she did a video of the walkthrough. So when this guy said, "I've been there more than 30 days," she quick pulls out her cell phone and says, "Oh, really? What about this?" And the police took one look at the video that had been taken 5 days before, and he told the guy, "You're out of here." And she was able to change the locks on the house. So really important thing to do. No trespassing signs. One of the other things that a lot of these squatters, these home thieves believe is that, if there's not a no trespassing sign and the house is apparently abandoned, they can just walk right in. And I think in one particular case, if there had been a no trespassing sign, it might have deterred this defendant from doing it. I think it's worth a try. But the only thing I would caution with this is that you don't want to advertise by putting up a no trespassing sign that there's nobody there, right? You want to make it clear that there's somebody paying attention to the house. So, I might urge, you might want to think about that. Everybody's situation is a little different. Only it's going to be the most appropriate use of that. And finally, in so many of these cases, the home is been emptied because the homeowner has passed away, or maybe like in the case of my mom, the homeowner suffered from dementia and was in a memory care facility, okay, and incapacitated and can't make decisions. In that case, it's very important, and I don't care if you're on speaking terms with your sister or not, you got to have a sit down. You have to decide what's going to happen to grandma's house, because everybody in the family has a stake in this. And this is how we preserve generational wealth. One of the great tragedies that's going on right now is the loss of generational wealth, especially in minority communities, but amongst all communities, quite frankly. And look, owning a home is the American dream. I want to see people take advantage of that. I want to see people benefit from that. So it's so important that families get together and talk about what's going to be done with the house that's now empty for whatever reason. Who's going to, pick up the mail? Who is going to, take care of the lawn maintenance? Who's going to make sure the bills are paid? You got to come to an agreement. Now, what happens if, God forbid, you are the victim of a squat? All right. Somebody, this home thief came in and put out an air mattress, and put in the pots and pans, and put on the gigantic flat screen TV, and they brought their dogs in with them. What are you going to do? You're going to do three things. First, you're going to call the police right away. Okay. Because if you've been doing all the things that we've been talking about, you can show the police that video and demonstrate to them why this person is not supposed to be there, and you're going to have your deed with you. The second that you're going to do is you're going to call and contact an attorney who's experienced in landlord-tenant cases. Why? Because we want to take advantage of the new legislation that Assemblymember Rozic and her colleagues have been able to pass. Because a lot of this stuff can be very helpful in landlord-tenant court. And a lot of it needs to get litigated, needs to be tested so that we can see how well it's going to work and how to make it better and more effective. And lastly, you're going to call my office at 7, and this number is up there. It should be in the chat. You're going to call our office at 718-286-6673, and you're going to ask for some help. And as the district attorney pointed out, look, we may not be able to help everybody, but we're certainly going to point you in the right direction, and we will open an investigation no matter what. We will open an investigation whether the police take the case or not. We will open an investigation whether or not you hire an attorney, because there are many different ways to go at this problem. And that's why I want people to do all three things, because any craftsman, any carpenter, any mechanic is going to tell you they want to have as many tools in their toolbox as possible. And that's what I want for you guys. I want you to take advantage of every tool, every technique you can to protect yourself and to get your house back. Our office is going to be one of those techniques and tools, and we're happy to do it. That's why we're doing this now. So that's pretty much what I wanted to talk to you about on squatters. I know everybody is very busy. I don't want to keep you much longer, but I do want to touch briefly on deed fraud. What is deed fraud? Deed fraud is how someone steals the title to your home, because it's bad enough to have a squatter, but it's even worse to have a deed fraud. And I've actually had cases with both. Squatter comes in and then they turn around and they file bogus paperwork to make it look like they own the house. Okay. And the bottom line is this, is if somebody can somehow get title to your house, either through false filings or stealing your identity or getting your elderly and vulnerable relative to sign the deed over without them realizing what they're doing, or to hold a fake sale, once they get title to your house, they are off to the races. They can get a home equity line of credit. They can rent the house out to someone else. They can get a second mortgage, or they can actually turn around and sell the house. And we're talking big money. How much is a house worth in your district, assembly member? Right? Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe millions of dollars. We have seen video of someone who came from one of these phony sales, walk into a check cashing place, walk out with a duffel bag full of money. That's the kind of money we're talking about here. So, quick, how can you prevent yourself from being a victim of deed fraud? Well, first of all, again, you're going to confirm your title. You're going to maintain your home and your property. You're going to avoid those aggressive sales pitches and lenders. You're going to be skeptical of any online ads or telephone solicitations. You're not going to give out personal information to someone you don't know. You're never going to sign any paperwork you don't understand. When I bought my house, I got an attorney. I'm a lawyer. I like to think I'm a fairly smart guy, but I don't understand real estate law. That's not my gig. I understand criminal law. So I got a real estate attorney to help me out and explain this stuff to me. You might want to consider title insurance policies, and you might want to consider getting a will, creating a will. And you can always contact the Department of Finance or 311 for more information on deed fraud. That's just my quick little posting there, because squatters and deed fraudsters, they're on the same spectrum. They're the same type of predators, and I want to see that you guys are protected from all of them as best as you can. Does anybody have any questions? I didn't answer all of the questions.
This is a good moment to remind folks that if you have questions, you can put it directly into the Q&A.
Yeah, so we are not seeing any questions at this moment, but rather a reminder from a member of the audience that ACRIS is a valuable tool and can notify you by email or letter when documents are recorded against your property. It's a great way to keep an eye out for potential fraud.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And in fact, that's they will notify you if you are the victim, if anybody starts filing documents in your name. And in fact, in the case I had where we had a squatter, the way we were able to convict the squatter, we were able to catch the squatter, was because that squatter went ahead and filed a bogus deed. And as soon as we got alerted from that, we went out and arrested them for false filing and other charges. So where do you check your titles? And how do you confirm your title? You're going to go to the Department of Finance website, the New York City Department of Finance website. And once you're there, you're going to look for a link to a service called ACRIS, ACRIS. I believe it's automated, computerized record information system, something like that. ACRIS will keeps track of everybody who owns property in the city of New York. Okay. And once you're in ACRIS, the deed to your house, you can find your mortgage, you can find a complete history of your house going back in many cases almost 100 years. And it will tell you who has filed paperwork for what. Now, it's not perfect, but it is a huge help. And everybody who is listening to this should go to the Department of Finance website. They should go on ACRIS and they should confirm that their title is there. Maybe print a copy out for yourself so you have it. And follow the directions for actually confirming your title. Because if your title has not been confirmed, you want to look into getting that done. Okay. ACRIS, the acronym you're referring to is ACRIS. And let me see, I'm going to.
Yep, and for those who are tuned into the Zoom, if you check the chat feature, you can see some of the resources that we've talked about, the Department of Finance, 311, and the New York City Department of Finance, ACRIS.
Yep. And in fact, what I'll do right now, Jackie, is I'm going to forward a copy of our ACRIS guide to you. And is it possible for you to share it with our audience?
Sure, we can try.
Okay, let's see if I can do it now. Okay.
And we can also, as a resource, we can get a copy to the Assemblywoman's office, and she can post it, or she can have copies in her office, and you can come by and pick it up. It's a step-by-step instruction on how you can register your house to receive a notification if something is filed against your home, which is a very valuable tool.
And I see we have a question here is how do you get a copy of your deed? You've owned the house for over 50 years. You're going to get it through ACRIS. And what we can do is, I was also thinking maybe, guys, can we email copies of these flyers to our audience?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. And then you'll be able to see for yourself exactly how to use ACRIS. It's a step-by-step guide. I've used it myself many times. And you should be able to print out a copy of your deed right off of ACRIS. It shouldn't be a problem. Okay. Any other thoughts or concerns? Colleen, have I missed anything?
No, Bill, you checked all of the boxes. I think I agree that's a great idea. If we have everybody's email address, if you did not RSVP via email, you can just in the chat now give us an email address, and so we can forward that step-by-step instruction flyer for you.
One of the things I just want to really hit home for everyone is the importance of neighbors and the importance of community. The fact is that we're all in this together and we all got to look out for each other. And thankfully, I have the benefit of strong ties with my parents' neighborhood because I grew up there and I'm on the first name basis with so many people. And the victims in one of my cases that I'm working on right now, same thing, nosy neighbors, right? But it's those nosy neighbors that are going to watch out for each other, and they're going to protect each other and help each other out. So, don't be afraid to, ask for help. Don't be afraid to reach out to the police. And, this way we can protect each other, because this is, police can't be everywhere at once. Our office can't be everywhere at once, but the community is out there every day, and they are a great resource in this fight against fraud. So I just want to really, touch on that and emphasize that point. We are here to help, and we're going to do everything we can to help you guys, but you can also help yourselves and help each other, and be good neighbors to each other.
I see an additional question.
Okay.
It says, quote, I live with my parents in my parents' home. The parent is not living there. Do I have to have my name under the deed?
So that's a good question. If your parent is still alive and you're there with your parents' permission and authority, I think you're probably fine. If your parent is, you want to have a conversation with your parent, though, about what to do if your parent becomes incapacitated, or, when the day comes that they pass. Because you want to make sure that the title to the house is protected. That's why having a will is so important. Or in the case of myself and my family, after my father passed away, my mother transferred title of the house to me. So, which was very good, because once she started to suffer from the effects of age-related dementia, and she couldn't make these decisions, that decision at least was already made. So, as long as your parent is healthy and, competent, and can say, hey, this is my child, they have every right to be there, it's not a problem, you should be fine. But you do want to have that conversation with your parents sooner rather than later.
We have an additional question. It says, you mentioned that a legitimate renter can invite someone else to live in the home. Are there options for removing that person if needed?
Yes, the housing courts. So it's the eviction process. Okay. Let's just say that my tenant decides that, he's met the girl of his dreams, and his children who have been living with him in my house need adult supervision because they're teenagers. And so his ex-wife moves into my house, not necessarily with my knowledge. His ex-wife, because she was invited by my tenant, is now the new tenant, and she has rights. So, a tenancy, at least for the purposes of criminal prosecution, can be transferred. I don't want to get into, the minutia of landlord-tenant law and civil litigation, because that's not my field. And asking me too many detailed questions about that is like asking your heart surgeon what to do about your brain tumor, right? I could give you advice, and it might be good. It might also not be good. And so I don't want to go too far down there. If you have questions that are going to get into the weeds, I would strongly suggest consulting an attorney with expertise in this.
Okay, great. So before we finish this presentation, I just want to reiterate some of the information Bill Jorgensen said, which is that there is an available phone number, which is 718-286-6673. Did I get that right, Bill? Perfect. So 718-286-6673. We'll also be emailing everyone the housing worker protection at queensda.org email that's available to receive more information on the Bureau itself, any additional resources, or any inquiries that you'd like to flag for the Bureau. And I also want to provide an opportunity for the Assembly member to say any last-minute remarks before we close out.
Before Assemblywoman, before we close out, it looks like there were two questions we didn't cover. First question is, where can I rewatch this presentation?
So I believe that we can send a link, a recording link, to everyone who tuned in for today. And if there are any public resources where this is posted, we'll be sure to send that out as well.
And we can look at sort of with the option of looking into sort of posting it on our website. Might also be an option. The other question is, how do you confirm your title? Can you review that again?
Sure. How do you confirm your title? You're going to have to, if you have a property transfer deed, you're going to want to file that with the New York City Register. You can do that in person. In fact, I think you have to do it in person. And you can go to the city registrar's office and file your deed with the city of New York. It's most often done when people buy and sell homes, but if that was never done and you have the deed, I would strongly suggest you go down to the Queens Business Center and file and register the house in your name. And then to confirm that your title is there, to make sure that your deed is on record, you do that through Acris, and you can print out a copy from Acris online. I see also a question here. Somebody said some time ago, New York City Finance established a program whereas one would be notified by them if any activity were still taking place with deed changes. Yes, that program is still in effect. And in fact, it's automatic now. If you own a detached or semi-detached home, you will be notified if somebody files documents in your name.
Okay, perfect. Assemblymember Nily Rozic.
Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, Bill and Colleen as well. I just wanted to say to everyone, we will be sharing out the resources and a quick summary of everything that Bill spoke about tonight. So if you missed it or you feel like your neighbors or a friend of yours could use this information, we will gladly pass that along. I'm sure many of you heard about tonight through my email list, but if you haven't, hop onto my Assembly website and sign up for our email blasts. We promise not to send too many, but it's often full of good information about what's going on in the neighborhood and summaries like from events tonight. So definitely stay tuned for more. We love working in partnership with the Queens DA's office. And so if there are other issues or topics you find interesting and you think others might benefit from, please reach out to my office. And with any other concerns, always feel free to walk in, call, email. You know how to find us. We are no strangers to so many of you. So again, just a big thank you to everyone who participated tonight. We'll share out the information and stay tuned for more topics like this one.